Is this the Paranormal Food Consciousness Podcast?
We are finally here in such a quaint little town.
Oh, yes, been quite a drive. Let's get out and stretch a while. Hey, look, there's a sign. Idaho Springs, Colorado, where the gold rush began.
Oh, wow. This is Dad's kind of place. Little home-style diners and the smell of gold in them hills.
Whoa, I can smell those biscuits and gravy right now. You know it.
Did you know that there was an abundance of haunted stories involving gold and gold mines?
I'm not surprised. There's lots of history in towns like this, especially since it was once a thriving gold rush town and now a smaller community. Idaho Springs was once home to a very busy place called the Phoenix Gold Mine.
Yes, it sure was.
Yeah, oh, I see. Here. Oh, and look at this plate. I see it was discovered in the 1870s and was long ago abandoned by prospectors, but many speak of spirits and souls that still reside in this spooky mine that is 30 miles west of Denver. Those that believe this include a crew from the TV show Ghost Adventures, who have claimed to encountered a tiny malicious spirit known as the Tommyknocker.
Tommyknockers are impish, gnome-like men similar to Irish leprechauns. About 2 feet tall and sometimes greenish, they looked like regular men and often wore the traditional miner's outfit. Living beneath the ground, they often committed random acts of mischief and practical jokes, like stealing unattended tools and food. They first worked in the Pennsylvania coal mines in the 1820s, but then followed to mine in the California gold rush in the 1870s. When those grizzled little gnomes were good, they were thought to bring miners favors and wealth, but when they were bad, they were said to bring misery, injury, and even death to those who doubted their powers or who did not believe in them. Tommyknockers were named for the knocking on the mine walls, which was a warning before cave-ins. Others say knocking also might lead to a rich gold discovery. The Tommyknockers disappeared with the gold rush, but strange sightings and sounds are heard near the mine areas today.
Ooh, that's creepy. Hey, I see a huge red monster of a building down that road. Is that an abandoned mine there?
It could be. Let's take a stroll down there to see.
Okay. A gold mine and mill. Very cool. We were only able to see the mining carts outside of the mine. We could see into the mine from a distance, and the entrance had really cold, damp air coming out of it. It's kind of eerie.
Oh, yes. It's so fascinating. Let's walk over to that little park and take a rest. I think I have some water here in my purse.
This is a very nice view of the mountains. Let's sit here on this bench and drink some water.
I have here a list of some other mines in different states that have more paranormal activity.
Okay, let me see that. Okay, I'll read about this one. The Reed Gold Mine, which is in Midland, North Carolina. As the site of the first documented gold discovery in the United States in 1799, Reed Gold Mine is an extremely historic and important site. That discovery sparked the gold rush that came to largely define and delineate a fast-growing country, with North Carolina leading the way until 1848, when the great rush to mine gold all across California kicked off. In recent years, modern-day prospectors and ghost hunters could not only visit, but also pan for gold at the historic mine. There's definitely a great ghost story to be found here, and it involves the wife of the neighbor of the first successful American prospector, Conrad Reed. Legend has it that Not long after arguing with her husband, Eleanor Mills fell to her death inside the couple's home. The scary story holds that Eugene returned home to discover his wife dead at the foot of the stairs, but still screaming. Terrified and desperate, he then hid her at the bottom of the mine shaft on Reed's property. There are some who claim to still hear Eleanor Mills screaming today from way down in the long-abandoned mine.
Oh, I think she was upset. Okay, let me read this
Terrible.
one.
That's a terrible story.
And then here's the, let's see, this one is in Nevada, the Tonopah Historic Mining Park in Tonopah, Nevada. It is home to more than merely a haunted mine. The Nevada city of Tonopah, located midway between Las Vegas and Reno, bills itself as an entire ghost town. Once teeming with silver miners, Tonopah Historic Mining Park later came to draw brave and curious travelers looking to experience a good scare. Visitors who've stayed overnight at the historic 5-story Mizpah Hotel, built in 1907 and restored by new owners in 2011, have claimed seeing ghosts known as the Lady in Red, and her backstory is quite scary in and of itself. Believed to be the spirit of a gold rush era lady of the evening, the Lady in Red was said to have been strangled by a jealous lover on the hotel's top floor. Oh, that was quite the strangle. The Wall Street Journal once wrote of her, her spirit is said to shake the chandeliers and leave pearls in rooms. Even if you don't believe in ghosts, the remote, high desert town of Tonopah is said to offer nighttime stargazing opportunities that are among the best in the country.
Sounds like a good field trip, except for listening to a woman strangling. Oh,
Yes.
It's awful. All right, here's another one. The Old U.S. Mint in New Orleans, Louisiana. For 8 decades, from 1838 to 1909, the Old U.S. Mint in charming, historical, and some say deeply haunted, New Orleans churned out serious coinage for both the United States government and, for a while, the Confederacy. Today, the building houses the New Orleans Jazz Museum. No matter who calls this historic building home, they are said to always share it with an array of ghosts. In 2008, the crew from the Sci-Fi Channel's popular show Ghost Hunters even paid a visit to the building. At least one former museum employee has claimed that a pair of male ghosts and a duo of female ghosts all visited him on a regular basis during his 8-year employment at the haunted house. And then here's the Murphy's Historic Hotel in Murphy's, California. Originally known as the Sperry and Perry House when it was first opened in 1858, the Murphy's Historic Hotel is said to be the home to rather an active and outspoken ghost. She's named Eleanor, originally employed at the hotel as a chambermaid. Eleanor was said to have met and fallen in love with a local gold miner. However, he left to seek fame and fortune and provide a better life for his new bride, only never to return home. Eleanor kept working at the hotel for 3 more decades, and after she died, employees and guests alike began seeing and hearing some rather strange things. Small objects flying through the air, door handles and locks suddenly wiggling, and doors randomly opening and closing. The activity is said to be especially intense in the upstairs Mark Twain ballroom, particularly during hotel staff meetings. Some have even claimed to see Eleanor's reflection in the hutch mirror in the gold room, where a portrait of her also hangs on the wall. Today, the hotel is a popular Halloween weekend spot, and it's easy to see why.
I can definitely see why. Here's one from the Sierra Nevada House, which is in Paloma, California. Located at the crossroads of California's Coloma Valley, which is Highway 49 and Lotus Road, the historic Sierra Nevada House is nestled near a river, just a brisk stroll from the town of Coloma. Before it was almost completely destroyed in a 2015 fire, the hotel boasted 9 rooms furnished in the Gold Rush era themes and decor. It was also said to house several mysterious spirits. Over the years, hotel proprietors have shared several tales of an active, outgoing ghost representing a small child named Isabella,
Oh, my.
as well as spirits of more than a dozen Chinese laborers who perished when a nearby gold mine collapsed on top of them. Maybe this costly blaze was some form of spiritual retribution for past sins?
Interesting.
And also, here's another one. The Golden Arm, which is in American folklore. We again return to Mark Twain, the famed satirist and philosopher and man of letters who was born Samuel Clemens, is also well known for many things during his remarkable life, and one of them is his telling of an American folktale called The Man with a Golden Arm, or more simply, just The Golden Arm. This chilling ghost story begins with the death of a man with an artificial limb that was made of pure gold. Can you imagine? Not long after his demise, the man's valuable golden arm is stolen.
Oh, boy.
Usually said to be swiped by either a loved one, a family member, or a desperate friend. This ghastly grave robbery then leads to a reanimation of the man with the golden arm, who rises up and stalks the terrified thief until he or she returns his missing limb.
Give me my arm back.
Oh, my.
Oh my, it is indeed.
That's terrible. All this walking and talking, I'm getting hangry.
Oh, yes. That Mark Twain story on the golden arm reminds me of a recipe that I saw recently. Hey, let's make an 1800s recipe. Some golden soft molasses gingerbread.
Woo, sounds yummy.
I'm hungry. Let's get cooking. Yeehaw!
This recipe comes from the 1800s housewife.com. It is for Miss Parloa's soft molasses gingerbread. This 1800s recipe for the gingerbread is very easy and it requires only 6 ingredients. Sweetened only with molasses and spiced with ginger, it's delicious. Your prep time is only going to be about 10 minutes, cook time 18 minutes, total time 28 minutes. And I'll read here the ingredients. You take a cup of molasses, a teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon ginger, 1 tablespoon butter or lard, half of a cup of boiling water, and 2 cups flour. It's just really simple, isn't it?
It is.
And then the instructions are to preheat your oven to 375. In a mixing bowl, add the molasses, baking powder, ginger, and your butter or lard. Then stir this together and pour on 1/2 cup of the boiling water and the flour and beat well. Spread it in a well-greased 8x8 pan, and then you bake it until set in the center, approximately 18 minutes.
That is really simple.
How simple is that?
I noticed it has no eggs.
I know. And I assume in the 1800s, maybe
They
You
got
know,
chickens in the 1800s.
Yes, they do, but maybe they were scarce, or maybe, there could be so many reasons why not. They didn't have eggs at that time, but
What binds it
It-
then?
I would think the butter.
That doesn't bind anything.
The butter would help. You've got the boiling water and the molasses,
guess
which is a sticky.
Yeah. Maybe that's what holds it together. The molasses, in some ways.
Well, it would be very dense. It's more dense than it would be because it can't
Yes.
raise.
I made a honey cake once, and I think it was similar, and it didn't have eggs in it. So, yeah. Wow, interesting.
And that cake didn't rise, right?
No,
it was
it
more
didn't.
of a flat cake, right?
It was a flat cake, so you did. Yeah, I just put it in like a tart container, so it came out kind of pretty, ridged edges and things. Interesting recipe.
Yeah, very, very simple. But, back then it was the simpler, I think, the better for them, and with limited ingredients.
I'm surprised there's a nutmeg in this because it seems like so many recipes of the time have nutmeg.
I guess because the ginger is in there, which I was also surprised to see ginger, because I would think that would be a little bit harder to have on hand, but maybe they were able to get that at that time. There was a note in the recipe from Miss Parloa that said that this is very nice if pains are taken to have the water boiling and to beat it well when the flour is added. So just simple little remarks that she left. And it says here, for those with modern refrigeration methods, this recipe works best when the butter or lard is at room temperature rather than very cold. It is worth taking time to let the butter soften before making the recipe.
Those are useful notes. I leave butter out on the counter. I don't know about you.
Yes, I do, because it's just too hard to work with when it's cold.
Right. You go to a restaurant, they give you butter, it's hard as a rock, and you're supposed to spread it on something. It's like, what? That's not going to work.
Right.
This sounds very yummy.
This is just a very simple recipe from the 1800s, and believe me, gingerbread will make your house smell like Christmas time. It's so warm and inviting. And speaking of warm, well, maybe not so inviting, I ran across another story, and this is about another gold mine in Arizona. Have you ever been to Arizona?
I'm trying to remember if we went down there with Dad and where you did. I think we just went to New Mexico, though.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was Taos that we went to
Right.
back then. When I went to Phoenix 4 years ago and enjoyed it so much. It was in October, but it was still very hot. One day we went to the desert botanical gardens and it was like 100 degrees. But the best part was visiting in Sedona and the beautiful Red Rock Mountains.
Oh, I bet it was quite scenic.
Sure was. And I kept thinking, ooh, this would be a perfect place to hide treasure. And I'd look in little places and think, oh, under that rock or under that cactus. And then I would also think about Dad and him taking the metal detector out there to find a fortune.
Would be nice. He'd sure love looking out there, but not in the heat. So you're going to tell a story?
I am going to. This is the ghost of the Vulture Gold Mine. And this was posted by a blogger in phoenixghost.com. The Vulture Gold Mine in Maricopa County was one of Arizona's most productive and influential gold mines. The mine was in operation from 1863 to 1942 and produced over $200 million worth of gold. The town around the mine, Vulture City, was a boom and bust town. It disappeared as fast as it sprung up. At its height, the Vulture City had a population of about 5,000. Vulture Gold Mine is credited with founding the nearby town of Wickenburg, and the agricultural area that sprouted to serve the mines also helped spur the growth in Phoenix. The mine was built when Henry Wickenburg, a prospector who had arrived from California, discovered a high-grade form of ore in the area. Miners flocked to the area in hope of getting rich. In the spirit of the Old West, Vulture was a rough place. Miners often died in cave-ins, while dozens were hung from the infamous hanging tree when they were caught stealing gold. There were many gruesome tales of rapes, murders, and freak accidents in the mines and surrounding towns, which left a haunted legacy in the now abandoned ghost town. One such tale is the sad story of Jimmy Davis, who got his arm caught in a piece of machinery and was then repeatedly flung into several pieces of heavy equipment, breaking every bone in his body before dropping him down dozens of feet into a mine shaft. The ghost of Jimmy Davis still haunts the mines, and his voice can be heard screaming for help in the middle of the night. Several other ghosts inhabit the mines, including the greedy miners who were killed for trying to steal the precious gold. Their ghosts can be seen around Hangman's Tree at night, trying to protect the gold they worked so hard to dig up. The Vulture Mine in nearby Vulture City is now a ghost town, long abandoned after being forced to close in 1942. Vulture Gold Mine was prosperous, but the miners led hard lives. The day-to-day grind inside the mines was tough. It was dark, dusty, and dangerous. There were plenty of fights, and the feuds followed the miners back into town. Once the mines closed, the miners went back to Vulture City to ease up for the next day, and when the saloons and brothels filled up, you'd get the exact kind of rowdiness that the Wild West is known for. Yep, shootouts, murders, and rapes were common in Vulture City. Thieves ran amok in the mines. High grading was common. Some estimates say that up to a half the ore in the mine from Vulture was stolen by high graders. Though everybody stole from the mine, stealing was punishable by death. The town never had an official lawman, so punishment was dished out vigilante style. The hanging tree was just outside of Henry Wickenburg's old home and was used to hang high graders who got caught. 18 men were hung on the hanging tree in Vulture. It was said the men who were hung took hours to die, and they were left to rot in the hot sun until they were buried under the tree. The assay building was where gold was assessed for quality and appraised. It was also where they kept the gold bullion. The building was the scene of quite a few shootouts.
I'm gonna fill you full of lead.
As bandits and rogue miners attempted to rob the precious gold bullion under the building. It was successfully robbed twice. But today, the Vulture Mine is privately owned, and it's open to the public for a small fee. Guided tours are also provided. It's also overrun by the ghosts of long-forgotten miners who love to haunt gullible tourists. Tourists and staff alike are often hear footsteps creeping up behind them, strange, disembodied voices whispering in their ears, and ghostly apparitions wandering around the mines. Many often report shadows on the walls when nobody else is there. The sound of pickaxes striking the walls are also quite common.
That's another place I won't be visiting alone at night.
I don't blame you.
Before we do that, let's take a break and play an interlude. We'll be back in just a moment.
We talked all about the Tommyknockers, and did you know that there was a novel written by Stephen King about Tommyknockers?
I do remember that he wrote such a book, but I've never read it.
I haven't read it either, but in his 1987 book, the story is about an idyllic small town of Haven, Maine, and its encounter with a deadly evil out for a diabolical invasion of body, soul, and mind. Something was happening in Bobby Anderson's idyllic small town of Haven, Maine. Something that gave every man, woman, and child in Haven powers far beyond those of ordinary mortals. Something that turned the town into a death trap for all outsiders. Something that is buried in the woods behind Bobby's house. With the help of her friend, Jim Gardner, they uncover an alien spaceship, and as they learn more about the strange discovery, the citizens of Haven begin to change. The townspeople are being welded into one organic, homicidal, and fearsomely brilliant entity in thrall to the Tommyknockers, who piloted the alien ship.
Ooh, that sounds like a pretty interesting book. I'm going to have to read that over the holidays.
He also used a poem from his childhood for the book's preamble, and it goes like this. Late last night and the night before, Tommyknockers knocking at the door. I want to go out, don't know if I can, 'cause I'm so afraid of the Tommyknocker man.
Ooh.
And there was also an ABC miniseries in 1993 based on that book, which starred Morg Hellenberger and Jimmy Smits.
Oh, interesting. Another book of his is also related to the types of stories we're telling and the topic for this podcast. He has a book called Desperation. For all intents and purposes, police officer Collie Intrigan, chief law enforcement for the small mining town of Desperation, Nevada, appears to be completely insane. He's taken to stopping vehicles along the desolate Interstate 50 and abducting unwary travelers with various unusual ploys. There's something very wrong here in Desperation. And Officer Intrigan is only at the surface of it. The secrets embedded in Desperation's landscape and the horrifying evil that infects the town, like some viral hot zone, are both awesome and terrifying. But one of Intrigan's victims, young David Carver, seems to know, and it scares him nearly to death to realize this truth, that the forces being summoned to combat this frightful, maniacal aberration are of equal and opposite intensity. My understanding is Stephen King had gone through some sort of town that was basically a ghost town. Got the inspiration for this book. It was in Nevada, too.
He's got some interesting stories in that head of his. We should try to find out what kind of food Stephen King likes and do a podcast on him.
Yes, more like a month of podcast. He's so prolific in his writing, maybe even more than a month. Probably could do a year of podcasts on it. The topics that he brings up.
We probably could. And I have one more story, purportedly true, about a prankster or poltergeist that was featured in an article by Nancy Bradley. Nancy is a psychic, investigative reporter, and author. But sadly, Nancy Bradley passed away on November 2nd in 2015. It was Nancy Bradley who coined the phrase gold rush ghosts, and she investigated and reported on the hundreds of ghosts and spirits that all haunt the gold rush country of Northern California.
That's interesting.
From these 15 years of research and investigation came her two best-selling books. The first one was Gold Rush Ghosts, and then The Incredible World of Gold Rush Ghosts. Nancy stated, "It is because of the extremely charged energy of the gold rush days that the tragedy of many people who lost their lives unexpectedly, sometimes at the end of ropes, that they, the confused and the wandering, stay and hover, looking for closure. No place in the world has as many ghosts per capita as the gold rush country of California, and that includes places known to be extremely haunted across the world, such as Wales, England, and our own witch hunt country of New England. Yes, the Gold Rush country is loaded with ghosts, and some are waiting for you to find them.
So I guess she's from New England, or at least whoever wrote this little, almost like an obituary on her. But that's interesting. Yeah, but that would make sense if there are indeed ghosts. A lot of people say it is associated with the energy.
Through years of research and expose, Nancy took her guests to the edge of psychic phenomena with her spooky yet true tales of sightings, hauntings, tales that will run goosebumps up the spines of the most skeptical of person to visit the site. Nancy Bradley was considered one of the top 10 psychics in the world. She wrote 3 bestsellers on ghosts and wrote over 400 articles for national magazines concerning ghosts, spirits, strange and unusual phenomena, and Nancy gave tirelessly to people in stress, to charities, as well as working with police and families that are victims of crimes across the world. A great animal lover, she tithed all events where animals are concerned. For more information about her, you can also go to her website at www.nancybradley.org.
So tell me about this story that is purportedly true.
This is under Harrowing Highway Experiences. The winding hillside known as Prospector Road is considered one of the most haunted roads in the Gold Rush country. Its pavement runs over old mines, old claims, and the bodies that lived its history. In some cases, the collapse of tunnels gave miners premature burials. Some died as a result of being eliminated by other greedy miners. Prospector Road is in some places little more than a one-lane path, as it runs the 7-mile stretch adjacent to the convenient and more traveled county-built Marshall Road. Prospector Road was built by Chinese laborer in the 1800s and cuts the winding mountainside connecting with Marshall at both Lotus and Garden Valley. The barely traveled road and surrounding terrain has a colorful Gold Rush history. It is well documented. The treacherous nature of the countryside caused many a wagon and later automobile to overturn.
Help me.
Spilling their passengers down the hillside to their painful date with death. In the 1800s, substantial gold discoveries were made in these hills, which account for its name. As with the age-old stories of prospecting and claim jumping, many a foolish miner who bragged a bit too openly about his find was coincidentally lost among the hills of Prospector. Their bodies were often never recovered and more often never looked for. It is known that many spirits roam the Prospector Hills, and at least one is still seeking the gold he never recovered while having his life cut short while trying. Perhaps it was his specter who frightened a young couple with poltergeist-like prank after they settled in a new home along the road. It was late one night. The pretty young bride awakened from her fretful slumber. She was cold and had a feeling of something amiss. She pulled the covers up. Then she remembered making a large log fire before retiring, one that should have kept the house warm till morning. She turned her head to see the reflection on the wall, observing the wood still burning in the stove. She was grateful for the mirror on the wall, which made this possible from her second-story bedroom. Then her imagination kicked in, and she thought she heard unnatural noises in the house. She carefully and gently woke her husband, who was not too thrilled to be getting out of bed to indulge her. Together, they went down the stairs. I knew my husband had locked and bolted the front door before we went to bed, she told us. Now it was ajar. The bolt pin was still in the outward position, yet the wall slot where it should still be secured had not been torn. The couple could find no evidence of forced entry. The mystery of the unexplained open door went unanswered. Everything else appeared as it should, that is, except for their dog. Hearing a frightened whimper, they turned to find their pet huddled and trembling in the corner of the room. Consoling the animal, the husband opened the door and looked outside in the dark. Nothing. He carefully went around the house. Nope. Thus the family was introduced to the ghost of Prospector Road. He is a wily old cuss, This apparition is described by residents as rugged, big, stocky, and attired in old pants or work-like clothes. Sometimes he has a canvas-looking raincoat pulled over his head. To those who are able to see him, he appears semi-transparent, tall and craggy. Some say he is sporting a beard. To those who cannot see him, but endure his wrath, and he is considered a pesky, annoying trickster. The legend goes, and most folks believe, his purpose is to keep people away from a claim he never received. You can continue reading this story and other stories about the hauntings on Prospector Road and other haunted highways in The Incredible World of Gold Rush Ghosts. True stories of hauntings in the Mother Lode.
Sounds kind of spooky.
Yeah.
Wonder if they
sounds
have
like it'd
any
be
other evidence. I guess
she is yeah, since it says she's an investigative reporter, she should have a lot of facts in these stories. And sometimes I always think truth is much better than fiction. Anything that's real seems to be much
stranger.
scarier. Yeah, stranger and scarier.
Yes, there are some very strange things we don't understand. And now when you see anyone post a video, it's like, no, it's faked in many ways. And it is getting harder and harder to tell whether something is real or something is fake from video evidence. So.
You need people who are in, the top of their trade to understand how they're put together when they do these things. So
yeah, it's like it's deep fakes. Have you seen those deep fakes? So there is a fellow on TikTok who does actions but superimposes both Tom Cruise's face as well as his voice over him. And you can't tell the difference.
Oh, I think I saw something about that, but I didn't realize that that's what they were calling them, deep fakes.
Yep, deep fakes. And so it's a concern, when you think you could actually do a deep fake about a leader doing something that they didn't actually do and causing, domestic turmoil, for instance.
The average person wouldn't even be able to understand that, unless it was pointed out that it was a fake.
This is true, especially given where we are today.
Yes. And here we are.
I learned a lot about mining and miners and stories. Hey, it's getting late. Shouldn't we go check into our hotel? We have a long day scheduled for tomorrow.
Yes, that's a good idea. And thank you, listeners. We appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed this episode about haunted gold mines. We'd love to hear stories from you and suggestions for our upcoming podcasts. Have a wonderful day.
This has been the Paranormal Food Consciousness Podcast.